The Magic the Gathering internet is outraged! Ah! The discourse is furious! Oh my goodness! The Usenet forums are surprisingly chill. But nonetheless, the Magic the Gathering community is all but exploding with fear and speculation about this. They reprinted Corey Steelcutter in Edge of Eternities? And as usual, no, they didn't. Everyone calm the hell down. Just what card am I talking about, and why are many Magic the Gathering players, incorrectly, calling it Corey Steelcutter 2 Edge of Eternity Boogaloo? Cosmogand Zenith is a 2/4 human soldier for 2 generic and a white mana from Edge of Eternities. Anyone who's played Constructed Magic recently remembers the flurry mechanic from Tarkir. Well, it's back on Cosmogand Zenith, this time without the flurry ability word, but it's flurry nonetheless. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, either put a +1/+1 counter on all your creatures, or create 2 1/1 human creature tokens. I'm sorry, two? Yeah, 2 1/1 tokens. As I'm sure you remember from Corey Steelcutter's dominance in the past few months, you can time the casting of your Cosmogand Zenith so that you cast a second spell immediately after your Zenith resolves, triggering it right away before your opponent has a chance to remove it. So in Modern, let's say, you can cast Cosmogand Zenith and then drop a Mishra's Bauble on turn 3 to put 4 power and 6 toughness across 3 bodies into play, and all of that for just 3 mana. If you manage to untap with your Zenith and get a second trigger off, well, it's hard to imagine losing that game. Before I go any further, in case you did not pick up on this from my silly lead-in, I want to be clear. Joking aside, no, Cosmogand Zenith is not as powerful as Corey Steelcutter. It is a very, very good card, and I do think it will see play in some formats, but it's not quite Corey Steelcutter 2, as so many are making it out to be. Allow me to demonstrate. Let's compare the two side by side. First of all, Zenith costs 1 more mana. Second, it's a creature, not an artifact, so it's a lot easier to remove. The human tokens it creates aren't as strong as the monk tokens that Cutter makes, nor do they have haste, but since you make 2 of them, I'm willing to count that as a wash. The team-wide power buff is a great secondary mode on the Zenith. At a certain point, making further vanilla 1/1s has diminishing returns, and you'd really like to start killing your opponent. All in all, this is clearly not quite as busted a card as Corey Steelcutter, but in a format like Modern that can easily trigger its ability on turn 3 with 0 mana spells, it's not that far off. And we're comparing this guy to one of the most busted cards printed in a standard set in years. Here, falling short of Corey Steelcutter is not some grave failing. It's easy to imagine Cosmogand Zenith finding a home in Modern. Not only is it a natural fit with 0 drops like Mishra's Bauble, but the continued legality of Corey Steelcutter in the format means it can function as your 5th through 8th copies of the absurd token generator. What's more, as a 3-mana creature, Cosmogand Zenith is a prime candidate for Unearth. I could also imagine Cosmogand Zenith being a house in Pioneer mono-white humans. After all, Cosmogand Zenith is a human, and the tokens it creates are also humans. With all the 1 and 2 mana cards in the Pioneer humans deck, it's not too difficult to trigger the Zenith consistently. The power boost is extremely good in the humans deck as well, since the deck is eminently capable of going wide even without the Zenith trigger. Of course, the Pioneer humans deck has never been hurting for 3-drops, and Pioneer humans hasn't been a very good deck in Pioneer in quite a while. But if there was ever a card that could revitalize the once popular archetype, Cosmogand Zenith would be that card. So again, just because the card isn't going to break open a format doesn't mean it's not really, really good for non-rotating formats like Modern, and it's not the only new card in Edge of Eternities that we can say that about. That's why presented here are the best new cards from Edge of Eternities for non-rotating formats like Modern, Pioneer, Pauper, and not Tiny Leaders. Sorry, there's just nothing. There's nothing for Tiny Leaders in this set. But the other 3, yeah, there's some goodies. And remember, if you are interested in getting new cards from Edge of Eternities for your decks, just, buy the singles that you need for the decks you want to play, or win a free booster box from me this July 31st at 3 p.m. Pacific on my next Whatnot stream, where I'm giving away a full case of Edge of Eternities. Look at all the value. Oh my, there's 3 there and 3 there. It's a case of them from me to you on Whatnot. Whatnot is just like if Twitch and eBay had a baby. Sellers such as myself are able to live stream themselves auctioning off items, or in my case, a really cool buy it now store with signed playmats, signed cards, and I'm also giving away a full case of Edge of Eternities. Also, when you create a brand new account using my invite code, you get $15 to spend on anything on Whatnot. You could use it in my store or anyone's store. Just go to www.whatnot.com/invite/Tolarian College. You'll get $15. That's not bad. And tune in, hang out with me. We're giving away a full case of Edge of Eternities. So it's like I always say, buy singles or just win a free box. I mean, there's nothing wrong with winning a free box or $15 free credit on Whatnot, sponsor of this video. All right. Now, what are those best new cards from Edge of Eternities for non-rotating formats? Let's start with a card from my favorite format, Pauper, where a new take on Ichor Wellspring is poised to make a big splash in the metagame. Cryogen Relic is a 2-mana blue artifact with a text box similar to Ichor Wellspring. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and when it leaves the battlefield, you also draw a card. Note that this is different than Ichor Wellspring, which draws a card when it's put into the graveyard. If you bounce Ichor Wellspring with something like a Glinthawk, it does not draw you an additional card. That's not the case with Cryogen Relic. Flickering Cryogen Relic draws you 2 cards. Bouncing it draws you a card and lets you recast it to draw another card. What's more, Cryogen Relic can put itself into the graveyard with its second ability. Pay 1 in a blue and sacrifice it to put a stun counter on a tapped creature. This card looks really good in Pauper. There are so many ways to blink or bounce Cryogen Relic for value. Whether it's in a shell with Glinthawk and Core Skyfisher, or in a ghostly flicker deck like Tron or Familiars. In the latter of which, by the way, the relic only costs 1 mana to cast if you have Sunscape Familiar in play. It's an artifact for affinity and metalcraft purposes, and it can of course be sacrificed to Reckoner's Bargain or makeshift munitions. The self-sacrifice angle on the card won't come up a ton, but there will certainly be games where the card taps down a Mere Enforcer on a critical turn, and draws you a card in the process. Simply put, the synergies with this card in existing Pauper shells are off the charts. It's also the kind of card that is strong enough to spawn its own archetype. I cannot wait to try out Cryogen Relic in all sorts of different strategies. Let's move on to Pioneer, where I've got a pair of rares that will revitalize classic Pioneer archetypes that have struggled to remain relevant in the current meta game. The first card is a powerful card selection spell that turns into fantastic card advantage in the mid to late game. Consult the Star Charts is a blue instant for 2 mana that reads, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands you control. Put 1 into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library. Consult the Star Charts also has Kicker for an additional 1 and a blue. If you kick it, put 2 of those cards into your hand instead. Consult is a phenomenal card. The absolute floor on this thing is an instant speed sleight of hand for an extra mana. Not great, but again, that's the worst this card can be. As the game goes long, the card's ceiling turns into a 4 mana dig through time. Can ya dig it, Daddy-O? Pioneer Azurius Control is a deck that lives and dies on 2 axes. First and foremost, it needs to make land drops. A lot of them. You desperately need to hit 4 mana on turn 4, 5 mana on turn 5, and you'd like to continue hitting land drops for the next 3 or so turns after that. There are a lot of powerful cards in Azurius colors that cost 4 or more mana. Planeswalkers like the Wandering Emperor and Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, sweepers like Supreme Verdict and Sunfall, and card advantage like Memory Deluge. If you get to 4 mana, these cards can take over the game. But you might not easily get to 4 mana, and when you do, you might still find your hand clogged with too many of these expensive cards. That brings me to the other axis that Azurius Control cares about, mana efficiency. Pioneer has become a very fast format lately. Ensuring that you can cast high-impact spells for not very much mana is critical. Consult the star charts is fantastic because it is both an excellent late game payoff and a useful cantrip in the early game to help you bridge the gap to that late game. Flexibility is an incredibly important trait in Magic. The more options you have, the more control you get over how the game plays out. Consult the star charts is a big deal for blue control decks in Pioneer. Next up, the best new card is Savannah Lions. Yeah, they've redesigned it again. A 1-mana 2/1 with fantastic creature types and a nice little ability to boot. It's not quite Savannah Lions, it's actually better. Lightstall Inquisitor is an angel wizard with vigilance. When it enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand. They may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and each spell cast this way costs 1 more to cast. Lands played this way enter tapped. This is a nice little disruptive ability to put on a 1-mana 2-power body. But the main reason this card could be a difference maker in Pioneer is a single word in its type line: Angel. Pioneer Angels is a deck that has lingered on the fringes of Pioneer for years now. Sometimes it's been better positioned in the metagame than others, but regardless of its positioning, it's always suffered from the same problem: its mana curve. The deck's core is Giada, a Font of Hope, Bishop of Wings, Righteous Valkyrie, and Resplendent Angel. These are all very, very powerful cards, but they are also 2 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, and 3 mana respectively. It's very rare for an angel to cost less than 3 mana, and it's almost unheard of for one to cost 1 mana. Lightstall Inquisitor, therefore, occupies a class of card all its own. The mana curve issue would mean a 1 mana 2/1 angel with vigilance would be pushing playability in the Angels deck even without any other text. Giada certainly won't hate having a 1-mana creature she can cast off her mana dork ability. But the other text on Lightstall Inquisitor is actually pretty valuable. No, the ETB won't win the game on its own, and some amount of the time your opponent will exile a land that they were planning to play tapped on turn 1 anyway, but this is just a 1-drop we're talking about here. And truly, some amount of the time the Inquisitor's ability will disrupt your opponent's curve enough to put you pretty far ahead early in the game. What's more, unlike many 1-mana 2/1s, the Inquisitor is still going to be pretty good later in the game when your opponent has fewer cards in hand. Say your opponent is planning to cast a Supreme Verdict on turn 4. In their hand is the Verdict and an untapped land. If you play the Inquisitor, then no matter which of those 2 cards they exile, their sweeper will be delayed by a turn. Pioneer is currently dominated by mono-red aggro, which is exactly the kind of deck that Angels are capable of preying upon. Now that Angels is about to add its first ever 1-drop, I wouldn't be shocked to see the deck crop up in competitive Pioneer tournaments before too long. Alright, enough Pioneer, enough Pauper. Let's talk Modern. We've got 2 more cards to go through, and one of them has a pretty good shot at being legitimately broken. But let's start with the other, more fun card first. Quantum Riddler is a 5-mana 4/6 Sphinx with flying. When it enters, draw a card. Also, as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand, if you would draw 1 or more cards, you draw that many cards plus 1 instead. Now I know what you might be thinking. 5 mana in Modern? Has the prof totally lost it? No, well, not entirely. See, Quantum Riddler has a new mechanic from Edge of Eternities: Warp. Warp is like the new twist on Evoke. A mechanic I have said is one of my favorite standard mechanics that is yet to be revisited in Standard. And though I would still like to see Evoke return properly to Standard, maybe when we return to Lorwyn next year, Warp is, in the meantime, a really fun take on the mechanic. Here's how Warp works. You pay a card's warp cost, and the card is essentially cast and enters play as it normally would. But then, on your next end step, the warped card gets exiled and can be cast again later for its full mana cost. In Modern, the main thing that Warp offers is a new way to abuse the card Ephemerate. We did it, fam! We broke Ephemerate! On turn 3, if you cast Quantum Riddler for its warp cost, draw a card, then target it with Ephemerate, not only will the Riddler come back and draw you an additional card, but because the Riddler is considered a new object than the one you warped, it won't exile itself end of turn anymore. Congratulations, you played a 3-mana 4/6 flyer that drew 2 cards, and you still have an Ephemerate in exile for the rebound. That is an utterly ridiculous rate. Ephemerating an evoked Mulldrifter has never really been a strong enough play pattern in Modern, despite what many aspiring Spike Twitch streams you may suggest I watch. Yes, you draw 4 cards, and another 2 if you untap and target the Mulldrifter again with Ephemerate, but that's a 4-mana play and your deck is built around this interaction. The cards you draw off of the combo probably won't be that good, but Quantum Riddler, while it draws fewer total cards, gets to pull off a similar interaction for 1 less mana and leaves behind a much more relevant body in the process. Quantum Riddler can't be Fatal Pushed or Lightning Bolted after all. The only way most modern decks can remove this massive Sphinx is with a delirious Unholy Heat, which is highly unlikely. Not only does the Riddler fit perfectly into the Ephemerate deck in Modern, but it also provides the deck with something it's sorely missed, a way to win the game once you've accrued all that value. Expect to see Quantum Riddler in an aspiring Spike stream near you within a few days of Edge of Eternity's launch. Okay, I have saved the best card for last. That's how these videos work. Yes, the last card on my list is better even than Cosmogand Zenith. He better be after all, as he's the face card of this entire set. Tezzeret, Cruel Captain, is a 3-mana colorless planeswalker with 4 starting loyalty. That's a mana cost that Wizards has said they're being extra careful putting on a planeswalker. But in the case of Tezzeret, Cruel Captain in Modern, I worry they might not have been careful enough. Tezzeret has 3 loyalty abilities. 0 him to untap an artifact or creature, and if it's both an artifact and a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. -3 Tez to search your library for an artifact with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And finally, you can ultimate Tezzeret for 7 loyalty. You can get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target artifact you control. If it's not a creature, it becomes a 0/0 robot artifact creature. That is indeed a lot of stuff. But these abilities alone are not what is setting off my alarm bells. No, that would be Tezzeret's static ability. Whenever an artifact you control enters, put a loyalty counter on Tezzeret. It's not hard to ultimate Tezzeret the very turn he comes down. You only need to cast 3 artifacts to do it. And between Mishra's Bauble, Mox Opal, and Mox Amber, that's 12 0-mana artifacts you can run right there. With an Emery of the Lock in play and a Mishra's Bauble in hand, that's 2 triggers right there. If you have a Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student in play, then the clue she makes when she attacks gets you the 3rd trigger you need. Think about that curve. Turn 1, you cast Emery and Tamiyo using Mox Amber and another 0-mana artifact. Turn 2, you cast Tezzeret, play a Mishra's Bauble, crack it, activate Emery, play the Bauble again, attack with Tamiyo to make a clue, then go to second main and hey, -7 your Tezzeret. On turn 2. The artifact decks built around Emery, Tamiyo, and the 2 good modern legal Moxen are already a fantastic shell in Modern. But now that Underworld Breach is banned, there hasn't been a single consensus means of winning the game with the shell. Kori Steelcutter, Jeskai Ascendancy, and Narset Jeskai Waymaster have all filled that role at various points. But now, Tezzeret Cruel Captain is primed to take the already good artifact deck in Modern to even greater heights. But these are just my opinions, and now I want to hear from you. Which cards from Edge of Eternities do you think will make their way into non-rotating formats like Pauper, Pioneer, Modern, and, well, is there anything for tiny leaders? Probably not, but let me know in the comments below. And remember, I'm giving away an entire case of Edge of Eternities booster boxes on July 31st on my Whatnot stream at 3 p.m. Pacific. Get $15 when you sign up using my invite code, and maybe, just maybe, walk away with a free booster box of this great new set. Thank you, Whatnot, for sponsoring this video.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
We're playing Magic the Gathering, and we're going to be drawing a lot of cards because we've got Nathan from Drawfee.
Hi, I'm Nathan from Drawfee.
You would make a really cool Sphinx.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would answer your riddles.
Opposition agent is gay?
She is to me.
No, I'm not up to date on the lore.
I've been trying this whole time.
I thought it was Hull
Do I
Creature.
get them or not?
A dream trawler.
Oh yeah, you're having limited flashbacks.
I'm just a legitimate business person.
So I'm gonna swing with Prosh at Nathan. You're gonna counter me
If you
because
had
you can't
not-
do it in real life.
Remove your card.
They're such rotund animals.
What's your deck called?
Do I have to say it?
You named it.
War Piss.